Welcome to Math in the 151. Today, we're going to be multiplying and dividing integers. What does it mean to multiply? Repeated addition, having multiple groups. Wait, before we start, we need to know what multiplication is going to look like. The multiplication symbol you're probably most familiar with looks like this, but sometimes you might see this or even just a dot. Remember in the other video when I said parentheses means grouping? It could also be a fast way to show multiplication. Like 5 times 8 could be written as 5 groups of 8, like this, or like this. Notice there is no symbol between the parentheses. When multiplying integers, there are 4 different situations, and we're going to look at each one. Situation 1. A positive times a positive. For example, 3 times 4, which means 3 groups of 4. To model this, we will draw 3 circles for our groups with 4 counters in each one. Since we have 12 altogether, that's our answer. You could also use a number line. 3 jumps of 4 lands on 12. 3 times 4 equals 12. So a positive times a positive equals a positive. Situation number 2. A positive times a negative. 2 times negative 5, which means 2 groups of negative 5. To model this, we will draw 2 circles for our groups with 5 negative counters in each one. Since we have 10 negatives, that's our answer. You could also use a number line. 2 jumps of negative 5 lands on negative 10. 2 times negative 5 equals negative 10. So a positive times a negative equals a negative. Situation 3. A negative times a positive. Negative 3 times 2, which means negative groups of 2. To model this, we will draw 3 dotted circles for our negative groups. Wait, negative groups? Yes, it really just means the opposite of what's inside the group. And we have 2 positive counters in each one. So therefore, they're all negative now. And altogether, we have 6 negatives. Negative 3 times 2 equals negative 6. So a negative times a positive equals a negative. Situation 4. A negative times a negative. Negative 4 times negative 3. Negative 4 groups of negative 3. To model this, we will draw 4 dotted circles for our negative groups. Remember, whatever is inside a negative group, it's really the opposite of that. And inside is 3 negative counters. But because of the group, it is now positive. And altogether, we have 12 positive counters. Negative 4 times negative 3 equals positive 12. So a negative times a negative equals a positive. Hopefully you noticed that regardless of the sign, you first just multiply like normal, and then remember the rules about the positives and negatives. So a positive times a positive equals positive. A positive times a negative equals negative. A negative times a positive equals a negative. And a negative times a negative equals positive. I have good news for you. These rules work for division too. Since division is the inverse operation of multiplication, which means division undoes multiplication, we can use the same rules. While multiplication is putting groups together, division is separating numbers into groups. Before we check it out, here are some different ways you might see division. The normal division symbol, the dash, the fraction bar, long division. Situation 1. A positive divided by a positive. For example, 14 divided by 2. Model 14 into 2 groups. Since 7 is in each group, that's our answer. 14 divided by 2 equals 7. So a positive divided by a positive equals a positive.
Situation number 2.
A positive divided by a negative. 9 divided by negative 3. Model 9 into 3 negative groups. Since we have 3 positives in a negative group, our answer is negative 3. 9 divided by negative 3 equals negative 3. So a positive divided by a negative equals a negative.
Situation 3.
A negative divided by a positive. Negative 10 divided by 2. Model 10 negatives into 2 groups. Since we have 5 negatives in each group, that's our answer, negative 5. Negative 10 divided by 2 equals negative 5. So a negative divided by a positive equals a negative.
Situation 4.
A negative divided by a negative. Negative 12 divided by negative 3. Model negative 12 into groups of negative 3. Remember, whatever is inside a negative group, it's really the opposite of that. And inside is 4 negative counters. But because of the group, it is now positive. So, negative 12 divided by negative 3 equals 4. A negative divided by a negative equals a positive. If you can say it, you know it. If you know it, you can teach it. If you can teach it, you are ready for the test. Make sure you wrote down all of your notes so you can review it later. If you miss anything, you can always re-watch the video. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, go ahead and ask in the comment section below and check out another math video or a random video. Have a nice day.